I'd like to call the Commission's meeting to order. Secretary Burgess, are there any changes to the agenda for today?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. There's no changes to the agenda this morning.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the regular agenda. We have actually two items for the discussion. The first item is 301, which is case number E12E0577, which is the proceeding to examine repowering alternatives to utility transmission reinforcements. I believe Elizabeth Gazzaro, who's our Deputy Director of Policy for the Office of Electric, Gas, and Water, and Kim Harriman are going to be presenting, our General Counsel, and then Raj Adapalli, who's the Director of Office of Electric, Gas, and Water, will be available for questions. So let's begin. Hi, Liz.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. And I'll just add that Kim and I are also available for questions if you want to ask us and not Raj.
That was assumed. Kim was hoping not, but...
What I'd like to do first is to address in brief terms the history of the proceeding to date, as well as the bases for the conclusions that are represented in the order that is before you today. Ms. Harriman will then discuss some procedural rulings that are also involved in the case. As you know, NRG Energy is the indirect owner of the Dunkirk Power Station in Dunkirk, New York. In March of 2012, NRG notified the Commission, in accordance with your existing retirement policies, that it intended to mothball the plant and take it out of service. The NISO and the connecting utility National Grid thereafter conducted reliability studies of the mothballing decision. Grid identified local reliability issues associated with the shutdown of the plant and proposed several transmission upgrades in response to those reliability concerns. Since that time, NRG has continued to keep the facility available under reliability service agreements, initially as 2 units and currently only 1, as it continues to be needed for reliability. The present RSS arrangement expires next year at the beginning of June 2015. In January of 2013, this Commission directed National Grid to evaluate the potential costs and benefits of repowering Dunkirk to run on gas as compared to the costs and benefits of the Grid's proposed transmission reinforcements. The Commission at the time recognized several potential sources of value that could be achieved through a repowering project: reliability, environmental enhancements, economic development, electric market competitiveness, and economic benefits to ratepayers. Subsequently, the New York legislature endorsed the Commission's approach and enacted a law requiring the Commission to consider these benefits when determining whether a repowering might be in the public interest. Thereafter, in April and May of 2013, the parties made their cases for the proposed solutions. National Grid filed a report supporting its transmission alternative, and NRG offered several options for repowering the Dunkirk plant. We had extensive public interaction around this evaluation. In July, staff hosted a very widely attended public information forum in Fredonia, New York, to get public input on the options that had so far been presented. Staff later also convened a technical conference here in October to review new information and analyses that National Grid, the NISO, and NRG had submitted over the summer. NRG and Grid subsequently negotiated a proposal for modifying the Dunkirk plant to run on gas, and they memorialized that proposal in a term sheet that was filed here in February of 2014. National Grid and NRG also submitted statements supporting the refueling proposal, and various public comments were filed in response to the term sheet. Those commentators included multiple interveners, Earth Justice, the Sierra Club, and numerous state and local elected representatives, and many, many members of the public. Staff then evaluated the arguments and the estimates of value that were offered by NRG and National Grid. Staff's assessment is included in a report that staff issued for public comment last month. That report provides the basis for the recommendation we are making here, that the Commission approve the proposal to refuel Dunkirk and authorize National Grid to recover the costs associated with implementing that project. To begin with, Staff agrees with National Grid and NRG with the identification of the attributes of generation at Dunkirk that provide value to ratepayers. These are also consistent with the benefits that the Commission and the Legislature earlier identified as appropriate for the assessment of a potential repowering. The term sheet and the supporting comments focus appropriately on reliability, economic development, economic impact, and environmental factors. First, the term sheet contemplates Grid paying about $20 million a year to NRG for the availability of the plant for a cost of about $140 million on a net present value basis for 10 years. NRG, under this agreement, will share capacity revenues with Grid if capacity prices exceed a certain market level. Hence, it is likely that the net cost to ratepayers may be under that $140 million figure. That is for the cost. In terms of the benefits, staff evaluated the proposal in terms of its reliability, economic development, economic and environmental aspects. Some of these benefits, I note, are quantifiable, at least within some kind of reasonable range, and we have quantified those. Others are expressed qualitatively, as they are not amenable to precise quantification. Overall, staff concludes that the benefits of the project exceed the costs to ratepayers, and hence Grid should be allowed the associated cost recovery. Staff agrees with Grid and NRG that the reliability benefits of maintaining generation at Dunkirk here are significant. Some of these benefits can be estimated, as I noted. The availability of the plant over the next 10 years gives National Grid certain flexibility in planning its system and allows it to defer some transmission investments that might otherwise be necessary. Grid estimated the range of avoided transmission costs could be between approximately $37.7 million to $76.4 million. The project will also avoid the need for any RSS payments that may be needed to address reliability between September 2015, when the refueled units would come online, and the end of the summer of 2017, when Grid's transmission projects would have come online. Staff estimates these savings at a net present value of approximately $50 million. However, other reliability benefits fall more in the qualitative category, and these are laid out for you in the staff report, but I would like to mention in particular that keeping Dunkirk in service mitigates other risks that could arise with other generation retirements in this region, provides some increased flexibility for the system operator, and increases the NYISO's ability to call on the hydro resources at NYPA's Niagara plant and imports from Ontario resources during high load conditions. In addition, the plant will now be dual-fueled, hence it provides additional fuel diversity reliability benefit in periods when natural gas shortages may occur. Turning from the reliability benefits, we note also that the economic development benefits are significant. Staff recognizes that the town of Dunkirk is extremely dependent on this plant for employment and tax revenue. Staff recommends, under the circumstances, excuse me, that the Commission recognize those tax benefits and the direct employment benefits that the plan provides to the community. We estimate these benefits to represent a range of value between $21 million and $34 million, again, on a net present value basis. There are certainly other economic benefits that accrue to electric customers. For example, both Grid and NRG projected economic price benefits to customers. However, staff is uncertain as to the duration of these benefits and proposes instead that you utilize a different metric for this factor. Staff recognizes that Dunkirk provides congestion relief at certain periods and recommends using a production cost savings metric. Staff has estimated the production cost savings associated with Dunkirk to range from $31 million to $81 million on a 10-year NPV. Finally, staff recommends that the Commission give some weight to the environmental benefit that Dunkirk provides in reducing limits on power output at Niagara, a major source of renewable power in the state. The refueling proposal also provides some benefit over the present RSS arrangement from an environmental perspective, in that it allows us to capture all of the benefits of maintaining generation at this location using a less polluting fuel than coal. For all of these reasons, we believe the term sheet proposal to refuel Dunkirk under a 10-year agreement is consistent with the public interest and will provide benefits to ratepayers. We also recommend that the Commission approve the recovery of the costs of implementing the term sheet proposal. National Grid suggested allocating and recovering these costs through the existing RSS agreement surcharge mechanism, and staff agrees that this approach is appropriate here. Thank you. I'll now turn to Ms. Harriman.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. We have several procedural motions and one substantive point to raise this morning. First, with respect to one of the procedural motions, Earth Justice filed a request for evidentiary hearings in this case. The standard to grant an evidentiary hearing is first found in law, and second, a matter of discretion for the Commission. The points raised by Earth Justice to support a statutory requirement for an evidentiary hearing is found in Public Service Law 6612F, and that pertains to a major rate increase. As noted both in the draft order and in the presentation by Ms. Grisaro, the impact of the cost for the term sheet in the contract falls below the threshold for a major rate increase, which is 2.5% of aggregate revenues of the company. In this case, the annual cost of the contract is approximately $20 million. For National Grid, a 2.5% increase in aggregate revenues would equate to about $63 million. So as a matter of law, an evidentiary hearing is not required. With respect to a hearing being required per the discretion of the Commission, Earth Justice raises several points. One being that the hearing is required, or a hearing is required, in order to ensure an open and transparent process. They also raise the point that there's conflicting information in the record and that the environmental impacts could only be explored through an evidentiary hearing. I think that through reading the staff report, which reads as an in-depth novel of what's been going on, as well as the draft order before you, you can see that there has been tremendous process afforded to this case. And I'd like to specifically point out that the staff report was issued for comment, which really gave the insight into the rationale and the thought process that went on to get to the staff recommendation. Moreover, having conflicting information in a record doesn't necessitate an evidentiary hearing. There is always differences of opinion. And lastly, the environmental impact has been raised and has been noted in the draft order. And as I will talk in a minute for the SECRA analysis here, it's in fact having an environmental benefit when you look at what we're doing as far as repowering a coal fuel plant to natural gas. With that said, the evidence before you is ample, it's complete, and an evidentiary hearing would not require or would not provide any additional certainty in the decision that we're asking you to make today, and therefore the draft order before you denies the motion for evidentiary hearing. The second point this morning is with respect to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. In taking the vote today, you're actually taking two actions. One is to approve the term sheet that was filed by National Grid with Dunkirk for the repowering of the Dunkirk facility, and the second is the authorization for allocation and cost recovery, as noted by Ms. Grisaro. As the lead agency in this case, because no other entity is going to be required to issue a permit, we will address the first action under SECRA, and that is an unlisted action, which is the approval of the term sheet. Dunkirk submitted a long-form environmental assessment form, and it points out in that form, as well as articulated in the draft order before you, that the changes that are necessitated by refueling are really within the envelope of the building. There will be no significant or material land use changes, as well as the environmental benefits will be noted in the reduction of air emissions through the removal of coal as the primary fuel source for this unit. Therefore, what you have in front of you as attached to the draft order is a determination of non-significance and a negative declaration by the Commission. The second action with respect to cost recovery and allocation of those costs is what we call a Type 2 action, and that is not an action for purposes of SECRA that necessitates an environmental review. So when you take your vote today, you'll be taking two votes as that will be indicated by the Chair. Thank you. We're available for questions.
Thank you, and I would note, in addition to the three esteemed colleagues I mentioned, we also have Warren Myers and Jeff Hogan and Tom D'Ambrosio, I assume, also were part of this analysis and would be available to question. So let me just start. And first of all, I appreciate the fact that the way we've processed this is that we were having the ability to both see the analyses done by initially Grid and then and NRG as well as others, and then staff's work, which I know also reflected a lot of the work that came off out of the technical session. So, from my perspective, I feel very comfortable that all of the salient information has been placed into the record, and that it just seems to me, in reading all the briefings and all the information, the analysis, the issue is not whether or not there's a net present value benefit, but what is the level of the benefit. And reasonable minds will differ, but clearly, whichever way you look at it, whatever numbers you look at, you're going to find that there's a net present value benefit. And so I feel very comfortable that the record is certainly there to support moving forward with this. The second piece, though, is, I'm struck by the fact that, we often look for a trifecta of benefits around cost, reliability, and the environmental benefits. In this case, I don't even know if there's a word for it, but it's like a quadfecta, because we also have local economic benefits that are clearly associated with retaining the jobs and creating construction jobs at the plant, as well as the local economic benefits that the plant provides in the form of tax revenue to the community. And frequently the issues, concerns we primarily have around the impact on consumers, the ability to create and maintain a resilient and reliable system, and as well as protect the environment, we weigh very heavily. But the fact that in this case we can also consider positive economic benefits really makes this not only a win for consumers, but a win for the community. And in that light, I congratulate Grid, who certainly had every interest to say, well, our preference would be to build transmission, to actually work with NRG and construct an agreement that provides the same reliability benefits that the transmission would, but additional system benefits, in particular the ability to convert a coal plant to natural gas, and also the fact that we now have the ability the flexibility on the system to make sure we're maximizing the availability of hydro from Ontario and also NIPA's units in Niagara. I think for us, maintaining fuel diversity and not artificially constraining hydropower because we simply don't have enough sufficient system in the western part of New York would be not only harmful to local consumers, but also deteriorates is a adverse effect on the rest of the state, because that means we have to use fossil fuel rather than hydro to potentially meet the instantaneous demand of the system. So I think, looking at all of this, I appreciate Grid's work. I know, these are always hard-fought negotiations. I'm sure that there was, from NRG's perspective, lots of give and take, maybe more give than take, and appreciate that as well. I think moving forward, for my purposes, the ability to repower a coal plant to natural gas, reduce prices to consumer, get an environmental advantage by making sure we're getting better use of our hydro plants, as well as avoid risk if another plant retires, and then provide local economic benefits on top of that. It's, you sort of look at it and say, why would we ever do anything but say yes and thank you to the parties for being involved and being creative and finding the solution. So with that, I'm certainly prepared to vote in favor of this. I congratulate also staff. I think your analysis really helped make it clear that we are looking at this as a local reliability benefit. It also reduces production costs, which of course then results in reduction of prices to retail consumers, which is always a primary concern for this commission. So thank you, and I'm prepared to vote in favor. With that, let me open it up to my fellow commissioners for any questions or comments. Commissioner Brown?
Just one quick question. The Western New York transmission upgrades envisioned by Grid, how does this affect that status?
I think clearly this is going to solve certain reliability concerns. There may be other reliability benefits with other transmission upgrades that will need to be pursued. So this is not end all. This is one step. There would be other developments too in the coming years.
Further questions or comments? Commissioner Sayre.
I attended the public statement hearing in Fredonia last year, and I knew it was going to be something special when I saw the flashing sign pointing the way to the PSC hearing as soon as I pulled off of the thruway. I wasn't disappointed. I was moved and impressed by the strength of the community's support for keeping this station open. Economic development and local economic issues are important factors, although, of course, not the only factors in our decision. But I'm extremely happy to be able to conclude from the record that keeping this plant open is in the public interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman? We're good? Okay. So with respect to that, as our counsel said, there are 2 votes that we need to take with respect to this matter. The first one is all those in favor, related to the seeker, favor of the recommendation to adopt a resolution and issue a negative declaration in accordance with the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the recommendation is adopted. The second vote is with respect to the contract itself. And that, with regard to that, all those in favor with the recommendation to adopt or approve National Grid's proposed allocation and the recovery of its costs associated with implementing the term sheet for refueling the Dunkirk generating facility, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And hearing no opposition, and the recommendation is adopted. So thank you very much. Okay, the second item for discussion is actually only for discussion only, and information. There's no vote. It's item number 501, which is the update on Fire Island. And Mike Raleigh, the Chief of the Utility Operations for the Office of Telecom, is going to be presenting. And I see that Chad is also here. So, Mike, you want to proceed?
Sure. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Item 501 is an informational item to update you on the status of telecommunication services on Fire Island and to discuss Verizon's recent action to remove VoiceLink as a tariff service on Western Fire Island. To recap, large portions of Verizon's landline copper network on Fire Island were significantly damaged or destroyed as a result of Superstorm Sandy in October 2012. Verizon determined that VoiceLink, a new wireless-based voice-only service, would be the most efficient, reliable, and cost-effective way to restore services in time for last year's summer season. In May 2013, the Commission authorized Verizon to offer VoiceLink as an alternative to basic landline service on a temporary basis, limited to Western Fire Island, pending public comment and further review. The approved tariff required Verizon to offer VoiceLink according to the existing rules and regulations for basic local telephone service, and specified that Verizon would need to seek further approval to offer the service in other areas of the state as a sole offering. As you know, Verizon's decision not to rebuild the landline network raised many concerns. The proceeding generated over 1,700 public comments from Fire Island residents, as well as interested parties from across the state, elected officials, and other interested parties from across the state. The comments covered a wide range of issues associated with the restoration and replacement of copper networks and alternative telephone technologies, including voice quality, reliability, feature limitations, compatibility with E911, and copper-based applications such as faxing and DSL service. Last August, the Commission conducted an informational forum and public statement hearing in Ocean Beach. Approximately 200 people attended, including about 50 speakers. The general tone during the public statements was similar to that of the comments. One of the main points that came out of the gathering was that while reliable telephone service is critical, customers rely on their telephone lines for more than just voice services, especially in areas where competitive choices are lacking. The company heard that message as well. On September 11, 2013, Verizon informed the Commission that it decided to rebuild its wireline network on Western Fire Island with a state-of-the-art fiber-to-the-premises, or FTTP, network capable of providing voice services and broadband, and they were going to have it built by May 2014. As determined by the Commission in its October 24, 2013 order, the decision to build a fiber network and the removal of tariff language regarding the possible expansion of VoiceLink as a sole offering elsewhere in the state rendered many of the concerns regarding the feasibility of VoiceLink as an alternative to wireline service moot. Thus, the requirement for a comprehensive report by Verizon on VoiceLink service was canceled. The item before you summarizes events since the issuance of the order in October and recommends that the case and all related complaints be closed. Staff is pleased to report to you that on April 17, 2014, Verizon informed us that telephone service over its completed fiber network was now generally available to all residents of Western Fire Island, and the company filed additional amendments to the tariff to remove that portion of the tariff related to VoiceLink, which became effective May 1, 2014 by operation of law. Since October 2013, staff has been monitoring construction progress on Fire Island and conducted several inspections of the serving central office and outside plant. Prior to making fiber services generally available, Verizon sent mail notices to residents informing them of the rebuild and the availability of voice and data services. As a result of these mailings, the company was successful in pre-positioning necessary equipment and cabling at the vast majority of storm-affected residential and business locations. Verizon also developed a web page dedicated to Fire Island residents to inform customers of all their service options. The company states that its pre-positioning efforts were successful and now allow them to efficiently provision services as more customers return to the island for the summer season. Nearly all of the pre-orders received are now complete, and customers are receiving fiber-based services. Currently, there are 3 service offerings generally available to Western Fire Island residents. They include traditional TDM-based voice service over the FTTP network pursuant to tariff, untariffed VoiceLink service as an option, and Fios digital voice service and bundled with Fios Internet, which is unregulated. Excuse me. The company states that there is no plan to offer Fios video service on Fire Island at this time. The company also advises staff that for at least this season, customers with voice and or DSL services provided on a surviving copper facility will continue to be served on copper until those facilities require replacement and or a fiber migration occurs. Copper loops will eventually be retired pursuant to applicable federal and state requirements. We note that Verizon has constructed fiber networks in other areas of the state for over a decade now, and those networks have shown to be both reliable and resilient over time. Accordingly, staff believes that further investigation of Verizon's service quality performance and network conditions on Fire Island prior to Superstorm Sandy is unnecessary, as an upgrade to fiber would likely have been the most beneficial remedy to address findings that network repair was warranted. It is also important to note that the standard voice-only telephone service on Fire Island, provided over copper or their new fiber network, will continue to be subject to the Commission's service quality reporting metrics and other applicable regulations. While Verizon will continue to offer VoiceLink as an optional service or on an interim basis to address cable failures throughout the state, staff will continue to monitor its use and report to the Commission accordingly. However, staff believes there is no longer reason for this proceeding, which was limited to the specific offering of VoiceLink service on Western Fire Island, to remain open. A large volume of the comments raised concerns about the general deployment of VoiceLink. Staff believes the immediate concerns of those comments were addressed when language that could have facilitated the expansion of VoiceLink in other areas of the state was removed from the tariff last September. Staff will, however, continue to monitor Verizon's use of VoiceLink in New York State in the context of our existing service quality proceedings, especially how its deployment relates to making timely repairs to its existing wireline network. Interested parties are welcome to comment there or file additional complaints as necessary. Staff believes that Verizon has met its obligations with regard to repairing damaged facilities on Western Fire Island and providing wireline telephone service subject to its tariff and applicable law. We believe the new fiber network will be more reliable and resilient to weather conditions on Fire Island than the legacy copper network that existed prior to Superstorm Sandy. We can expect an immediate and long-term improvement in telephone service quality for both year-round and seasonal customers on Fire Island. Residents will also benefit from the expanded availability of broadband services through the FiOS platform. In conclusion, we recommend that this case and all other petitions regarding the conditions of the pre-Sandy network on Fire Island be closed. Staff believes this action can be accomplished procedurally, so this report is for informational purposes only, and no Commission action is required. I'd like to end my report with a graphic that represents the areas of the metropolitan area which experienced the most severe damage to communications, infrastructure, and long-term outages following Sandy. The shaded areas you see are where Verizon had replaced damaged copper with fiber in either the entire wire center or significant portions of it. And while those areas look small on that map, that's a considerable amount of the population in the metropolitan New York area. I'm happy to report that with the Fire Island build complete, the restoration of wired telecom networks following Sandy is now complete. That concludes my report on the status of telephone service on Fire Island, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Michael. And I appreciate the report. I also appreciate the color scheme. So, I think this is terrific, and I'm glad that we're at the sort of the end of this chapter in terms of the restoration, and particularly the fact that as I was coming on board last year, it was just after I think Commissioner Akinpora had attended the hearings on Fire Island, and appreciate the fact that we are now have fiber and that people are restored. So it's good to close this chapter. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Akinpora?
As the chair said, I did attend the public statement hearings, and it was a lively group, and they made a lot of very good points. What a lot of this boiled down to was public safety issues. People who had Lifeline devices could not use their devices with VoiceLink, and the police department that was there did get me on the side to say that they had a problem with it. So we're happy that this has worked out, and I really want to thank, firstly, Mike Rowley, for, you've been very tenacious in making sure that things have been done right, paying attention to consumers who have extra concern, and that's really appreciated. And to Sandra Sloan and the group at the call center who really helped keep us up to date on the phone calls that were coming in and the concern that was exhibited by the residents of Fire Island. So as the chair said, we hope that this page is now finished, and not to really speak in a negative way with regard to VoiceLink, but VoiceLink was not the answer for Fire Island. So we're happy that the FiOS will bring peace and calmness to some of the residents. And I just have one question, Mike. How many people are still on VoiceLink?
I don't have that information, but there will be people coming onto the island now, or pretty much that should be over at this point. But from the take rates, I would the take rates on the fiber, the bundled package, and just the plain basic telephone service, I would say very little.
Right.
Eventually.
So I hate to put you on the spot, but here again, FiOS, VoiceLink, is that how we kind of measure that? I mean, how many people are going to stay with VoiceLink when they have, a FiOS remedy?
I'd say that's pretty accurate, but okay. Again, right now it's an optional service, and it's untariffed, so right. There's no obligation for us for them to provide info on that. I'm sure they would if we asked. But
I'd be interested to know. We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question or one comment. I know that there's a study going on, actually, and I think it'll be important for us to understand the impacts on a couple pilots where people are using VoiceLink to see if it can provide secure services. I think they're in the one in the south. Is that right, Chad? You?
Yeah, AT&T is doing some pilots down south with respect to replacing wireline telephone with wireless-based services. We do intend to be informed through those pilots that are being done underneath the auspices of the FCC.
Good. I think that would be helpful for us to understand what their findings are. Any other comments, Commissioner Sayre?
I'd just like to commend Verizon for doing the right thing here for its customers and the community by bringing fiber all the way to customers' homes and businesses. And I'd like to add to the Chair's and Commissioner Akampora's commendation of staff for keeping the pressure on.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Berman? No? Good. Great. Well, that was, we'll move now, since it was discussion only, to the consent agenda. And I know, Commissioner Sayre, you are recusing yourself from item number 566. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So now you have to close your ears because I'm going to talk about item 566. Actually, it's with pleasure. This item is with respect to commendation with, I think, it's 50, is it 54 companies, 51 companies? My notes.
Yeah, it's actually 53 of the ILECs out of 74 companies.
Would you mind, Chad, just taking a couple minutes and summarizing, or Michael, just what this is about? Because I think, it's rare that we get to do this, and it's a pleasure to be able to do it today.
Yeah, essentially we go through every year and make a determination as to whether or not the ILECs and the CLECs have, number one, met their obligations underneath our various service quality metrics, and secondly, take a look and see if they have exceeded our expectations. And in the case of what you have before you is the 2013 service quality commendations for the incumbent local exchange carriers and the competitive local exchange carriers. For those carriers that meet our metrics 95% of the time, I mean, they're required as a minimum to meet them 85% of the time. In order to be commendated, they're required to meet them 95% of the time. There are 74 companies in total that are looked at. They include the 53 ILECs and 21 competitive local exchange carriers. Of those 74, we are recommending that we provide commendations to 51 of them this year. That includes 31 of the ILECs, or 58% of the ILECs, and 20 of the competitive exchange carriers, which is 95% of the competitive exchange carriers. It also includes the Frontier companies, and the report before you also does provide the annual report for Frontier service quality, and again, Frontier has met our requirements for service quality for the year 2013, and some of their divisions are also receiving commendations. I would add that for these companies, they look upon the commendations as an accomplishment. And it's something that they're proud of every year when the Commission grants these commendations, and they even include them as part of their FCC filings with respect to service quality to indicate that they have been commended for, want of a better term, exemplary customer service here in New York State. So, it's a good news item. It's consistent with respect to the performance in the past. And I think, they set a goal to get the commendations, and we're pleased this year to recommend again granting them to the companies before you.
Thank you. What I mean is, by the way, my comment was not that we don't have companies that outperform. We have a lot of companies that outperform, but frequently when we have matters before us, it's where we're talking about opportunities for improvement. It's nice sometimes to be able to take a moment and say we've got companies who are doing a great job. They're they're focused on providing customer service, and so I'm very pleased to be able to note that, and we will be sending letters to each of them, so thank you. Then I have one other item I just wanted to bring out that's on the consent agenda. We have with the change in the 18A assessments from this past winter, we now are going to be working with each of the utilities to implement the new rates that they will be implementing in order to reflect the reduction in the 18A collections. I want to note that this staff has done a great job. There's a lot of work to try to figure out exactly where each of the companies, it's electric, gas, right, and water companies are, to be able to first figure out where they are and then to determine what's the right path forward so that we could as quickly and accurately as possible make certain that we're on the right track and reflecting the reduction in the 18A collections. So with that, I just want to express my appreciation to Jeff Hogan and his team that I know have been working very hard on looking at a lot of numbers and trying to get it right, and we'll be moving forward with that. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Commissioner Berman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to speak on item 261, which you were just talking about. Unfortunately, it's not an item that I can look at as a good news item. In fact, based on the SAPA notice, the published session agenda, and this item not being on the discussion agenda, but rather only on the consent agenda, at first blush, it may inadvertently appear as nothing more than merely implementing what was done in the 2014 budget, which is accelerating the elimination of the 18A surcharge. That's part of our administrative regulatory obligation under the law, and if that was all it was, I would not have anything else to add today on the item. But this item also deals with, to me, a much thornier and more complicated issue that dates back to 2009. We are implicitly being asked to address the inherent and catastrophic problems with the 2009 legislatively mandated 18A collections that occurred between 2009 and now. For point of historical reference, on April 7, 2009, New York State enacted the state budget for 2009-2010, which in part required the Department of Public Service to collect a temporary state energy and utility service conservation assessment, commonly referred to as the 18A TSA, by others as a regressive energy tax. The TSA is applicable to electric, gas, steam, and water corporations, municipal and gas corporations, subject to the Commission jurisdiction, and for purposes of 18A, also the Long Island Power Authority. The TSA was expected to generate an estimated $540 million in additional revenue during the 2009-2010 state fiscal year for the support of the state's general fund. The actual way to recover the funds were somewhat complicated under the law and required the Commission to direct the utilities to implement the law. The Commission did what it was required to do. It did so in June of 2009 by ordering the subjected utilities to establish and collect a surcharge from customers. This 2009 imposed surcharge hit every single business and resident in our state, and between 2009 and March of 2014, approximately $2.9 billion was collected by the state. Every year, the department, because of the imposition of the law on behalf of the state, sent a letter to the utilities telling them how much they owed, and every year the utilities wrote a check and it went to the general fund. Ironically, the collections went to the general fund and never actually helped with any energy savings or energy programs, albeit the stated purpose of the TSA was to help with energy conservation. Every year the utilities filed with the department what their collections were, and every year this went on. In August of 2013, a letter was sent to the utilities by the department seeking information to reconcile the collections and get things in order for the Commission action today. What I find disturbing is we're having now to revisit just how awful the 2009 law was and the devastating effects the collections can have on New Yorkers. We are now first addressing that in some cases, the collections may have been significantly overcollected to the tune of close to $250 million, and that does not necessarily include LIPA. Yet, the overcollections are apparently limited in time and to a few companies. Most of overcollections may have happened only recently. And yes, we do have a plan that this order is immediately going to put in place to get, in a just and fair ways, the monies overcollected back to the customers who paid them. I appreciate that this surcharge was not in the control of the utilities. This surcharge was imposed upon them by the state, and they were directed to turn the money over in full to the state in the first fiscal year 2009-2010, which immediately set up a significant cash flow issue from the get-go. Moreover, they did every year inform the department and the state of their collections. I continue to remain concerned on our over-reliance on energy tax surcharges, which extend beyond just the 18A surcharge, as there are other non-legislatively imposed surcharges that we need to look at. The way surcharges, I continue to remain concerned, the way surcharges are being collected and allowed to build up and are setting us up for more problems and complications. The imposition and collections of surcharges are in the control of the state. High energy costs in New York State are a key impediment to the state's economic growth. Our focus must remain on easing the high energy bills our families and businesses shoulder. These are office work cooler and kitchen table issues. Accelerating the phase-out of the 18A assessment is not enough. What this item shows to me is that we as a state, and more specifically in my role as a regulator, I need to make sure that we are properly accounting for ratepayer funds. The 2009 law was destined from the get-go with problems in collections. I'm glad we have now and are reviewing the records and ensuring the collections going forward are appropriate. Because we are in this order looking at getting back immediately in a fair way to the ratepayers the overcollections and doing it through tariffs that are going to come back before us before they're permanent to the Commission, and we're going to be able to look at that before we approve them on a permanent basis. I'm going to be voting yes because I don't want to harm the ratepayers. And when I look at the order, I see that we're going to be doing this in a just way, and I also see that we're going to be doing this in an immediate way. I do note that we're going to need to have some consumer outreach on exactly what the plan will be. I do note that I expect that we're going to fairly quickly get in a detailed accounting on all of the companies, including LIPA, on what exactly all the collections have been from 2009 to 2014. And I also note that we have set up now on a going forward basis that the collections that will be going forward are going to be done differently so that this won't happen again. For me, what's important is that we do have other ongoing proceedings, and I think that what's significant is that as we look at those proceedings and look at how we're focused on ratepayer funds and the cost-benefit analysis that gets done with looking at the issues that are coming before us, it's very important that we look at all that has to happen in the energy of the future and the different things that we're tasked with and that we're concerned about, so that we make sure that we holistically address all that we want to do, all that we need to do to ensure that we have safe and reliable energy at reasonable prices for folks. So thank you.
Any further comments? Let me just reflect on just one point. And, you know, we live in an extraordinary complex world. And one of the things that we know in this country, in the last 10 years, we've had a lot of economics ups and downs, and there were periods of down. And while I wish we could live in a bubble, we don't. And we are part of a sort of greater economy. It's not necessarily, I believe, the appropriate role for the Commission to debate issues that are decided amongst other bodies who also have the interests of the state at hand, and our role is to implement. So with respect to that, I don't think it's appropriate for us to debate tax policy here. But at the same time, we do have an overall interest in maintaining the electric bills and looking at ways to maintain affordability, which is a good portion of what we are focused on in our rev docket, our water dockets, when we do rate cases. And, I do think it's important when we look at these, we consider all of the effects, things we can control and things we can control, and making a determination of what's the best for consumers. But with that, our action here today is really to address is to make sure moving forward, and anytime there are charges, there's going to be reconciliations that need to occur, that we do the reconciliations accurately and we get the levels of the surcharge accurate. And I, again, appreciate the work of staff and what I think is tremendous effort in a short period of time to get us on that track. So if there are no further comments on the consent agenda, I'll move the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, and then the consent agenda is approved. Commissioner Burgess, are there any, or Commissioner Secretary Burgess, are there, nice promotion. Well, maybe it's not a promotion. Any other matters before us today?
There are no other matters today, and the next commission session is June 26th at 10:30 here in Albany.
Great. Commission stands adjourned. Thank you.